course. Here's a powerful motivational speech in the style of Sarah Jake, without mentioning him directly and without a heading or closing sentence. There comes a time when you realize that where you are is not where you were meant to stay. You feel the stirring in your soul, a whisper that calls you higher, a nudge that reminds you that settling was never part of your destiny. But the journey from here to there, from who you've been to who you were created to be, it isn't always clear. Sometimes the path is hidden in uncertainty, wrapped in fear, shadowed by the memories of past failures. You have prayed for direction, for guidance, for a sign that confirms you're on the right track, and yet the road ahead still looks unfamiliar. The terrain still feels unstable. You're standing in the middle of the unknown, trying to move forward when everything in you is tempted to turn back. But hear me when I say this, you were never meant to return to the place you outgrew. Growth is not about comfort. Elevation is not about ease. To go where you are called, you have to be willing to walk even when you can't see the next step. The steps you take may not always make sense to those around you. They may question why you've changed, why you no longer settle, why your heart beats for something greater. And it will be tempting to shrink, to downplay your dreams, to dim your light so that others don't feel uncomfortable in your presence. But listen to me, your journey is yours. Your steps are ordered in a way that no one else may understand. You don't need their validation to walk into the promise that was made for you, but even knowing this, there will still be moments when you feel lost, times when you question whether you're strong enough, brave enough, wise enough. You'll look at where you are and wonder if you're even moving at all. But movement isn't always measured by leaps and bounds. Sometimes the greatest progress is simply in your decision to keep going. Every time you choose to rise instead of retreat, to push instead of pause, to believe instead of break, you are stepping forward. I know you've been through storms. I know there were nights when you cried yourself to sleep, mornings when you woke up and didn't know how you'd make it through another day. I know you felt the weight of disappointment, the sting of rejection, the agony of waiting for doors that never seemed to open. But let me remind you of something. What tried to break you did not succeed. The fact that you are here, standing, pressing, believing, means that there is still more ahead of you. You cannot allow fear to paralyze your purpose. Fear will whisper that you are not ready, that you are not worthy, that someone else is more qualified. But purpose was never about qualifications. It was always about obedience. It was always about the willingness to trust that each step you take, no matter how uncertain, is leading you exactly where you need to be. And yes, there will be obstacles. There will be detours. There will be moments when you thought you were going one way only to find yourself redirected to another. Do not despise the detours. Do not curse the closed doors. Do not allow frustration to convince you that you failed. Sometimes what looks like rejection is really protection. Sometimes the no you received was necessary to make space for the yes that will change everything. Your steps are being guided even when you don't realize it, even in the delays, even in the disappointments, even in the silence. Every season of waiting is preparing you. Every moment of uncertainty is strengthening you. You may not understand it now, but one day you will look back and see that every single step, every heartbreak, every loss, every shift was leading you to something greater. So walk with confidence, even when the path is unclear, even when the journey feels long, even when you don't have all the answers. Trust that where you are is not where you will stay. Trust that the steps you take today are leading you to the doors that are already waiting to open. Trust that the purpose over your life is greater than the fears that try to stop you. There is a powerful freedom that comes when you finally accept that your journey is yours alone. Not your mother's, not your father's, not your friends, not your mentors, yours. The moment you realize this is the moment you begin to walk in confidence, trusting that every step you take is uniquely designed for you. But too often we give people too much say in our process. We let their opinions weigh more than our convictions. We let their fears limit our faith. We let their doubts shape our decisions. And before we know it, we are living a life that isn't truly ours. We're following a script we never wrote, walking a path we never chose, trying to meet expectations that were never meant for us. It is a dangerous thing to depend on people for direction when they were never given the map to your destiny. They don't see what's been placed inside of you. They don't feel the stirring in your soul. They don't hear the whispers that call you higher. And yet you allow their voices to become louder than the guidance that has been set before you. You keep second-guessing yourself, holding back, waiting for someone else to confirm what you already know deep down. But listen to me. You don't need permission to walk in your purpose. You don't need approval to step into your calling. You don't need validation to move forward. The assignment over your life is yours to carry, whether people understand it or not. And I know it's hard. I know it feels lonely. I know it's frustrating to explain yourself to people who don't get it, but you weren't meant to be understood by everyone. Some people will question you because they don't have the vision to see what you see. Some will discourage you because they are afraid of what they don't understand. And some will even try to hold you back, not because they don't love you, but because they can't imagine what it means to grow beyond where they are. But you can't let their limitations become your boundaries. You can't let their small thinking confine your big purpose. You were created for something greater. Something that doesn't always make sense in the beginning, something that may look crazy to others, and that's okay. Growth often looks like foolishness before it looks like wisdom. Faith often looks reckless before it looks right. You don't have to explain your every move. You don't have to convince people to believe in you. You don't have to waste energy proving yourself to those who were never meant to be part of your journey. Let them watch, let them question, let them assume, and then when the time is right, let them see what happens when you choose to trust the process instead of the opinions of people. You are responsible for your own path. No one else can walk it for you. No one else can make the choices you need to make. No one else can push through the struggles, the setbacks, the sacrifices that are required to get to where you're meant to be. This is your journey, and no one else has the authority to dictate how it unfolds. So stop waiting for the crowd to cheer for you before you take the first step. Stop hesitating because someone doesn't see what you see. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable with your growth. This is your life, your vision, your destiny. Walk it out boldly, without fear, without apology, and without hesitation. Fear has a way of making itself sound like wisdom. It speaks in a voice so familiar that you mistake it for caution, for logic, for discernment. It dresses itself up as protection, convincing you that staying where you are is safer than stepping into the unknown. But let me tell you something. Fear is a liar. It will whisper that you are not ready, that you are not qualified, that you are not strong enough. It will remind you of every failure, every mistake, every reason why you should not believe in yourself. It will use your past against you, making you question if you even deserve to move forward. And if you listen to it long enough, you will find yourself paralyzed, standing still when you were meant to move, shrinking when you were meant to rise, hesitating when you were meant to step boldly into purpose. Fear does not care about your destiny. Fear does not care about your growth. Fear only cares about keeping you small. It is designed to limit you, to stop you from becoming who you were created to be. And the worst part? Fear doesn't have to be true to be powerful. It just has to be believed. You don't need to have everything figured out to move forward. You don't need to feel completely ready before you take the first step. Purpose was never about being fully prepared. It was always about obedience. It was about trusting that what has been placed inside of you is greater than the fear trying to hold you back. Think about all the times fear has kept you from moving. The moments you talked yourself out of opportunities because you doubted if you were good enough. The doors you never knocked on because you assumed they wouldn't open for you. The dreams you put on hold because you worried about what people would say. How much time have you lost waiting to feel ready? How many blessings have you delayed because you let fear convince you that you are not worthy of them? But today, you have a choice. You can either continue listening to the lies of fear, or you can decide that fear will no longer have the final say in your life. You can decide that even if your hands shake, even if your voice trembles, even if your heart races, you will move anyway. You will take the step anyway. You will believe anyway, because purpose does not wait for fear to disappear. You were created for more than a life of hesitation. You were not placed here to stay stuck in cycles of doubt and insecurity. The dreams in your heart, the vision in your mind, the calling on your life, they are not accidents. They were placed in you for a reason, and fear has no right to steal them from you. Fear will try to convince you that staying in the background is better than stepping into your purpose. It will try to make you comfortable with playing small. But you were not designed to live in the shadows. You were created to walk boldly, to take up space, to live in the fullness of your calling. So what if you're scared? Move scared. So what if you don't have all the answers? Move anyway. So what if people don't understand? Do it anyway. Fear will always be present, but it does not have to control you. The only way to silence fear is to prove it wrong by doing the very thing it told you that you could not do. You are not your fears. You are not your insecurities. You are not your doubts. You are bigger, bolder, stronger than you think. And when you stop believing in fear's lies, you will finally start believing in the truth of who you really are. Detours are frustrating. You set out with a plan, a clear vision of where you're going, and then suddenly things don't go as expected. The opportunity you were counting on slipped through your fingers. The relationship you thought would last forever falls apart. The job, the promotion, the breakthrough you were praying for doesn't happen, and now you're standing there confused, discouraged, wondering where you went wrong. But what if I told you that detours are not distractions? What if I told you that every closed door, every unexpected turn, every delay is actually divine? What if I told you that the path you're on is not a mistake, it's a setup for something greater? See, when we make plans, we base them on what we know, but our knowledge is limited. We see only what's in front of us while the bigger picture is hidden. And because we don't see everything, we assume that any shift, any change, any redirection must be a setback. But it's not. It's protection. It's alignment. Think about the times you were so sure something was for you, so convinced that a door was yours to walk through, only to later realize that if you had gotten what you wanted, it would have broken you. That job would have drained you. That relationship would have distracted you. That opportunity would have limited you. But at the time, you couldn't see it. All you knew was that the answer was no. And it hurt. It made you question yourself. It made you wonder if you were doing something wrong. But now, looking back, you realize that what felt like rejection was really redirection. The problem is most people don't trust the detour while they're in it. They panic, they resist, they complain, they try to force their way back to what is familiar, even when it's no longer good for them. They become so focused on what didn't work out that they miss the blessing in what is unfolding. But when you learn to trust the process, you stop seeing detours as obstacles and start seeing them as open doors. Doors you wouldn't have chosen for yourself but are leading you exactly where you need to be. You are not lost. You are not being punished. You are not forgotten. You are being guided. You are being positioned. You are being prepared. Just because your route looks different than you expected does not mean you are off track. Sometimes the long way around is the best way forward. And yes, I know waiting is hard. I know uncertainty is uncomfortable. I know it would be easier if everything fell into place exactly as you planned. But growth doesn't happen in ease. It happens in the unexpected. It happens in the stretching, in the surrender, in the moments when you release control and trust that even though you can't see it now, something greater is coming. So instead of fighting the detour, embrace it. Instead of seeing delays as defeat, see them as divine direction. Instead of mourning what didn't happen, prepare for what's ahead, because when the door finally opens, when the right opportunity comes, when you arrive at the place you were always meant to be, you will understand why every detour was necessary. You will see that nothing was wasted, not the heartbreak, not the disappointment, not the waiting. Your path is unfolding exactly as it should, and when you finally reach where you're meant to be, you'll look back and realize that the detour was never a delay. It was a setup for something far greater than you could have imagined. Waiting is one of the hardest things to do. When you know you're meant for more, when you feel the weight of a promise in your heart, when you've prayed, prepared, and positioned yourself, yet nothing seems to be happening, it can feel like time itself is working against you. You watch as others move forward, as doors open for them, as they step into their blessings, while you remain in the same place, wondering if you've been forgotten. But waiting is not punishment. Waiting is preparation. It is in the waiting that you are stretched. It is in the waiting that you are refined. It is in the waiting that you develop the strength, the wisdom, the resilience you will need for what's ahead. Because what is coming is bigger than what you expected, and you cannot step into a greater season with the same mindset, the same habits, the same level of faith you had before. The waiting is shaping you, but the problem is most people don't understand this. They see delay as denial. They assume that because it hasn't happened yet, it never will. And so they grow impatient. They try to force things to happen in their own strength. They take shortcuts, accept less than what they deserve, settle for what is available instead of waiting for what is meant for them. And when they do, they end up with something they weren't prepared for, something they cannot sustain. Premature blessings become burdens. When you step into something too soon, when you rush ahead without being ready, what was meant to bless you can break you. That's why you cannot despise the waiting season. It is not meant to hold you back. It is meant to build you up. There are lessons you need to learn, character you need to develop, growth you need to experience before you can carry what is coming. And yes, I know it's frustrating. I know it feels like nothing is moving, like every day looks the same, like you are standing still while the world moves around you. But just because you don't see movement doesn't mean there isn't progress. Just because you don't have proof yet doesn't mean things aren't shifting behind the scenes. There is work being done in the unseen places, things being aligned in ways you cannot imagine. What is meant for you is still yours. It is just being prepared for the right time. So what do you do while you wait? You prepare. You don't sit still. You don't waste time complaining. You don't become bitter watching others receive what you've been praying for. You grow. You develop. You sharpen your skills. You work on yourself. You build the foundation so that when the opportunity comes, you are ready to step into it fully equipped. Because when the door finally opens, there will be no time to get ready. You will need to be ready. And if you've spent your waiting season wisely, if you've used the time to grow, to learn, to heal, then you will walk into your next season with confidence, knowing that you didn't just wait for it, you prepared for it. Your waiting is not wasted. Your patience is not in vain. Every day that passes is another day closer to what is meant for you. And when it finally arrives, you will understand why you had to wait. You will see that the delay was not to deny you, but to develop you. Because when something is truly meant for you, it won't just come at any time. It will come at the right time. There comes a point in your life when you have to make a decision. Either you keep standing still, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for certainty, waiting for a sign, or you move, you step forward, even if your hands are shaking, even if your voice is trembling, even if you don't have all the answers, because movement is what activates the next season. Movement is what shifts you from where you've been to where you're supposed to be. Too often we get stuck in hesitation, afraid to make the wrong move, afraid to take the wrong step, afraid of what people will say if we fail. But what if I told you that staying still is the real failure? What if I told you that waiting for certainty is what's keeping you stuck? What if I told you that clarity comes in motion, not in stillness? You don't need all the answers to take the first step. You don't need to see the whole path to start walking. You just need faith. Faith that each step you take is leading you somewhere greater. Faith that even if you stumble, even if you have to adjust along the way, you are still making progress, because progress is not always about speed. Sometimes it's just about refusing to stay in the same place. And yes, I know it's scary. I know there's comfort in the familiar, even when the familiar isn't fulfilling. I know it's easier to keep waiting, to keep saying one day, to keep making excuses for why now isn't the right time. But how long will you keep delaying your own breakthrough? How long will you let fear convince you that you're not ready? How long will you let doubt rob you of what was always meant for you? Because the truth is, there will never be a perfect moment. There will never be a time when everything is completely lined up, when all the risks disappear, when you feel 100% ready. Growth doesn't happen in certainty. It happens in movement. It happens when you trust that even if you don't know the outcome, you are still being guided. Think about all the things you've survived. Think about all the times you thought you wouldn't make it, yet here you are. You are stronger than you think. You are wiser than you give yourself credit for. You have already overcome so much, so why would you stop now? Why would you let fear win now? The first step is always the hardest. The unknown is intimidating, but do it anyway. Move anyway. Step anyway, because even if you start small, even if you take tiny steps, each one brings you closer to where you are supposed to be. And the moment you start walking, the moment you commit to moving forward, things will start shifting in ways you never expected. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need validation to move. You don't need anyone to approve of your journey. This is your life, and no one else is responsible for how it unfolds but you. So walk. Even if people don't understand, even if they question you, even if they doubt you, walk anyway. Because what's ahead of you is greater than what's behind you, and you will never see what's possible if you don't take the first step. The journey won't always be easy, but every step you take is proof that you refuse to let fear win. And one day, when you look back, you will see that every single step was worth it. There is something powerful about knowing that every step you take is intentional. That even when things don't make sense, even when the path is unclear, even when you feel like you are walking in the dark, your steps are still leading you somewhere. Too often we assume that just because we can't see the full picture, nothing is happening, but movement isn't always visible. Growth isn't always obvious. Change isn't always loud. Sometimes transformation happens in the quiet, in the unseen moments, in the places where it feels like nothing is shifting. But it is. You may feel like you've been walking in circles, like no matter how much effort you put in, you're still stuck in the same place. But what if I told you that even when it looks like nothing is happening, something is? What if I told you that every step forward, no matter how small, is shifting things beneath the surface? The breakthrough you're waiting for isn't just in the big leaps. It's in the consistent steps, the ones no one claps for, the ones that feel like they don't matter, the ones you take even when you're exhausted, even when you're uncertain, even when you're tempted to give up. And I know how easy it is to want to stop, to want to sit down and say, I've done enough, I've tried, I've prayed, I've pushed, and nothing is changing. I know what it feels like to wonder if all the effort is even worth it, but what if you're closer than you think? What if the moment you stop is the moment before everything was about to shift? What if the step you refuse to take is the one that would have led you into a new season? You can't afford to stop now. You've come too far. You've endured too much. You've fought too hard. You didn't survive everything you've been through just to quit right before your breakthrough. Keep walking, keep believing, keep moving, even if you're tired, even if you're discouraged, even if you don't know what's next. Because purpose isn't always about knowing every detail. It's about trusting that as long as you keep walking, you will get to where you are meant to be. The enemy of progress is comfort. It's so easy to settle into what's familiar, even when you know it's not where you're supposed to be. It's easy to tell yourself, at least I know what to expect here. But you weren't meant to stay where you started. You weren't created to live in the past, to remain in the same cycles, to let fear keep you stuck. Growth requires movement, and movement requires trust. You may not understand why the journey looks the way it does. You may not understand why certain doors had to close, why some seasons had to be painful, why some people had to leave. But one day you'll look back and realize that every single step, every delay, every detour, every no that felt like rejection was actually leading you somewhere greater. So take the step, even if it feels small, even if it feels insignificant, even if it feels like you're walking alone, because every single step matters. Every single step is moving you forward. And when you finally get to where you're meant to be, you will understand why you had to keep walking even when you didn't feel like it. Every step you take is part of a greater plan, even the ones that felt uncertain. Even the ones that led to detours, even the ones taken in fear, they were all necessary. Nothing has been wasted, not the waiting, not the setbacks, not the moments of doubt. Every single experience has been shaping you, strengthening you, preparing you for what is ahead. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to see the full picture. You just have to keep moving. Keep trusting, keep believing that you are not lost, you are not behind, and you are not forgotten. Every delay was for your protection, every closed door was for your redirection, and every challenge was for your growth. So walk boldly, walk with confidence, walk knowing that even when the path is unclear, you are still being guided. And one day when you look back, you will see that every step, every single one was leading you exactly where you were meant to be. Now go forward. Your steps are already ordered. Keep walking. Keep believing. Keep pushing forward, because what's ahead of you is so much greater than what's behind you. And your steps are leading you exactly where you need to be.